Hello again! As usual, this is Becca, often going by Nightcat or Nightcat's Meow when online, and welcome back to my weekly videos on programming tutorials, currently focusing on Linden Scripting Language. As you may recall, last week's video wound up running way too long, so this week's video is the other half of that one. In an additional note, I observed during reviewing the video that the audio has a little bit of chop, and that is not a matter of my mic or my recording software, actually. That is a problem with my editing software. It seems to happen when I sometimes have too many layers of things in there, or it could have been a problem with the storage drive. I'm still sorting out exactly what causes that, but it's going to take me a little bit to make sure that goes away. I will be working on that, but I won't delay publishing videos for it. So without further ado, here is the book tutorial. And remember, next week I will have one on how to control all of that from a single script in the root of the book instead of having to use the link messages as I've been showing you. So we're now on to Karen W. asking about making a book that you can open up and turn the pages. A lot of this is going to just be a different application of things we've already learned, such as the position and rotation data we were just dealing with, some of the stuff I've talked about with doors, about how you cut the prims, and we're also going to be dealing with texturing for the first time in my videos. So, onward to it. As usual, we'll go ahead and give you a special freebie anytime we're dealing with particular builds. When my system crashed, I was in the process of discussing how to work the covers here. So I was talking about how, just like with some of the door tutorials, that it is useful to cut them in such a way that you have half of the prim. I've done the same thing with the covers and the interiors. You can see by the markers for resizing that as far as SL is concerned, the prim continues all the way out to here. Well, on our screen, it stops here at the midpoint. That is achieved as usually is with the path cut option, which I was just playing with the fix there. The other thing of possible interest are right over here. These are for the folded page, for when it's open, when the pages are lying there, because if you've ever opened a particularly large book, you'll notice the pages don't necessarily make for a completely flat looking surface. They have sort of a wave to them. And for those that are curious on the building end of things, you take a basic cylinder for that, path cut it. You cut it in half, but not on the main axes. What this does is when you scrunch it down, you now have that wave-like function where it's much thicker on one end and tapers down. You don't actually have to play with building that to make the book the way I'm going to send it to you. It'll be already done in the freebie version, exactly like you see it here. I've actually got a spare copy sitting over there that I'm going to put up in my Marketplace account when I am done with this tutorial. But to start, we're going to begin popping in here. Assuming that you want to keep this book on a desk somewhere or just a place that you put down, we are going to get its rotation information. Just as before, for courtesy's sake, in case you're not doing this on a private sim, which this is not actually a closed sim, it's actually meant for roleplay. Like I said, this is just a special build platform. Cast it as a string. Get rotation. And I don't currently have anybody here, but sometimes people will come through. So it's always good practice to be in the habit of not spamming everybody around you with lots of messages while you're gathering information you need. There is a way to have this be relative to something, but as I've often said, I don't want to throw too many new things at you at once. In fact, I've already decided next week is going to be a continuation of this, where I will go through and show you a few ways to upgrade the scripts in the gate and in the book in a way that will function a little faster, a little smoother, and much more efficiently. But it's going to involve introducing a bunch of things that I don't want to clutter up and throw too much at you at one time here. Integer book, since we already have integers for open and close. As said before, if you're just dealing with a simple yes or no, true or false, you can have if book, because that will only be passed if book is true. What was wrong with me using the wrong? Parentheses problems, parentheses problems. All right. By this point, y'all should be pretty familiar with the basic of running a toggle. Just running these functions we're creating up here, setting the toggle to true or false, whichever one we're making it be as it runs, and then exiting the touch start function. Now this doesn't do much for us right now because we only have one setting. So let's bring that up. Save. We'll get another rotation. Or we would have if I had not accidentally removed the state entry because I was being silly. There we go. Copy. Set. Wrote. Now it's safe to get rid of that. Save. Now, as is often the case, if you're going to make larger scripts like this, you want to test each function individually. So we have it rotating up. That part works fine. No reason it shouldn't have, but it's always good to test. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to build in the triggers for actually opening the book. Since we're using different control scripts in each prim, not the most efficient way to do it, not the best way to do it, but it is the easiest. Next week I'll show you the better way. We're going to set up a link message. Message linked. Link set. Channel 0. Message open. Null key. Copy. Paste, since we're literally only changing one word. Changing that to close. Save. There it goes. And I'm back. Sorry about that. Had a bit of a system crash there. Seem to be having a bit of a problem with the removable hard drive that I record to. Hopefully it'll let me finish the video this time and get everything edited. But, as I was saying, we're going to have to get the proper information relative to the root for this one. We're going to do this the same way we have been before, converting that to an owner say, which means we no longer need a channel. Starting it out, just for convenience, by actually making it write the line of code we're going to use. LL set local route, beginning parentheses, close that off because now it's where we need to put in the data. So plus, we're going to get the vector, casting it as a string so that it becomes part of the complete string we're making. Get local route, plus, to add more string, the closing parentheses, the semicolon, and quotation marks. So we're ending the string there just before another closing parentheses and a semicolon because that ends the actual line. One ends the line we're working with, one ends the line of code that now we only have to copy and paste. Just paste that right in there. Save it to make sure everything is good. It is. Minimize that. And now there we go. Simply add a space so it'll run the state entry again and give us a new line. There it is. Copy. Paste. Save. But right now it doesn't know what to do with that. So we're going to add here. It's took me a minute to remember the right way to format that. Link message. Link message. And we'll use the same variable, the same variables we had before. In this case, we need integer from, integer chan, string message, and key who. If message equals or is exactly open, then we run the open command. We don't need to actually set anything here, just add in the return. Else if, since there is going to be more than just the open and close in this, we just haven't gotten to them yet, we cannot just put else. We don't need to worry about a toggle switch though, since that's handled in the primary script. Save. And actually we don't need this, but we will need it somewhere else, so copy and save again. Well, cut and save again. That takes advantage of the message linked close and open. Now, you see something there that the book fell over before that closed. That's a clue that we may want to cut that and put it up there. Order of operations. Sometimes what order you do a step in affects how natural it looks. We're going to simply produce the exact same effect right in here. Because I copy and pasted something else, I caused myself a small difficulty. It's also going to be mostly the same. But these will be different, so we'll take those out. We'll recreate the state entry. Owner say. This is why coders get really good at typing out these lines. We have to do them over and over and over and over. It just becomes second nature after a while. Set local rote. Add the variable. Copy, paste, remove. There we go. The book opens and unfolds quite naturally. The next step is going to be the pages in the middle. Now this is where we get something a little more complicated. You may remember from the doors how I taught you to resize an object. We're going to be using these pages for multiple things, so we're actually going to wind up resizing them as part of the process. But the first step involves getting its position and its rotation. Since we're going to be moving this one as well as resizing it, we're going to get that information. So owner say, quotation mark, /n for the line break, set local rotation, get the data, get local rotes, close that one off, add another line break. If it makes it a little easier for you to visualize, you could do it that way. Then LL set position. Remember that since this is not the root prim, its position will automatically be relative to the root prim. Rotation does not work that way. Position does. That's just how they wrote the system that we're scripting into. That's string. We're not using a sword belonging to a hobbit here. We're not using sting. Get local position, because we want to know its position relative to the root prim. Whatever we put in here would be set relative to the root prim. But if we just use get position, it would get its position in the sim, which would not correspond to its position relative to the root prim, and everything would get complicated. Just use get local position. And since this is the actual end, after the quotation marks close out, there we go. Small error. What was it? I mistakenly put the quotation mark ahead of the plus sign. Put right there, SL had no idea what to do with it. It didn't make sense given that line there. It would make sense to begin a new string after the plus, but it would make no sense before. So, close. We're also in here going to put set scale. That is how you resize something. What scale to set it for is easy enough. If you go to the Object tab, it's right here, the size in meters in all 3 dimensions. If you remember, 3 bits of numerical information is a vector. So 2.38 for the first value, comma 1.48 for the second value, comma 0.36 for the third value. Those are going to be close enough for the work we're doing. Make sure to close both the vector and the actual command brackets correctly. I almost didn't. So that's again 2.38, 1.48, 0.36, right there. Save. Now for what are we going to do with it to close it off? We're going to scrunch it down, and then we're going to hide it. As you see, as I rotate it back and forth, it can imitate the turning of a page, which is what we want. So, getting its position and rotation, once again. Set scale. You need the regular parentheses to open up arguments for the command, and the pointy one to open up for the vector. So, how wide it is. So we can copy and paste, and then figure out which value
Please
change.
excuse that. I forgot to turn off the
2.38,
text message
on
tone, or actually any of
1.48,
the
that's
sound
the same.
on my phone.
Here's the one. That is actually a, we're going to make this
Tone
one for my gaming. 0. Now we
0,
also
1.
only changed one value, as it is right here. Incidentally, that's the thinnest that you're allowed to make a prim in Second Life. There are ways to make it appear to be thinner than that, but that involves a bit of interesting jiggery-pokery. And that's more of a building trick than a scripting trick, but we can cover those at another time. We don't need a touch. What we need, and we can borrow from right here, Copy. Paste. Our link message code. Close that. Close that. So there you have. The book looks nice and full there. Nice and folded out when it's there. So what is there for that? Well, that would be bringing in these little two parts here. Bring these down. Get them in proper place. Futz with them as you will until you have them pretty well where you want them. And then we're just going to do the same things with these that we did with everything else. Script. That's just simply pasting what I already had copied. Putting a fresh state entry in. If you're smarter than me, you did not delete the previous one because I now have to recreate the command. Owner say. But at this point, this should be getting to be old hat here. My typing might not be quite as smooth as you're used to seeing. I actually just put fresh custom keycaps on my keyboard. It's part of a steampunk keyboard mod. Got the special typewriter style keycaps, and I've got brass railing, and it's moving along, but they're shaped a little different, and it throws off my spacing just a touch. And as we just saw, if you just go like that, you will get a new line. And it's still green text because it's still within the quotation mark there. String. Get local position. And of course it's subtracting because I had not defined the commands in this copy yet. As you see, you don't actually have to have any code in these. They just have to exist so that the compiler knows what it's looking for when it sees them. So it knows what they are. Set scale. Object. 2.83, comma, 1.36, comma, 1.48. Scrunch that up just a touch to nicely hide it away in there. Set scale. Prep for your vector. 2.83, comma, 0.87, comma, 1.15. Your mileage may vary. The specific numbers you get may not be the same. But again, just copy and pasting. That's the convenience of writing your owner say in such a way that it produces an actual line of code of its own. You want to make that even simpler. The /n is generally a good thing to use, but that will do the trick too. Just like so. Copy. Remove. Save. Oh, we have a small problem. And that means I put something in the wrong place. Now, since these should have the same sizes, aha, there's the problem. I put 2 point as opposed to 0.2. That is an easy mistake to make. 0.28 as opposed to 0.2 or 2 point. There we are. Now, since they are the same sizes, I had copied the thing before with what I needed. That was silly of me. Please forgive the minor little moments of minor intellectual failings. As I had told you before, I was having trouble with the removable hard drive that everything records to. So far, it's holding up this time, but LL set local rotation. Get local rotation. Set position. Anybody who caught my minor goof of forgetting to cast that as a string, congratulations. Since I had it just copied and pasted, it just filled in the exact same position there. but we can tell which one it is by a simple check of, yep, the open position there is as it should be. This part is me just being picky. As long as it's hidden, that's all that'll matter most of the time. So now you have the book that can shift to open and closed positions. But the next thing that you had wanted was the ability to turn a page. That is where we're going to take this and make it flip over. So we're actually going to do two things with this. The first thing is when it's open, after everything is in position, we're actually going to make it default to invisible. Set alpha 0, comma, all sides. You can think of alpha just as a simple shorthand for visibility. 0 would be no visible, alpha would be all visible. So let's see. Yep, you saw it kind of disappear in there. Highlight invisible, and there it is. This is going to be useful when it comes to actually working the turn. We're going to set up a one direction turn. Page. The first step will be making it go visible. So we can copy, paste. The second step will be setting a series of steps whereby it will go over bit by bit. The easiest way to do that is going to be this way. By again gathering its local rotation data. So, but you're going to want a brief time delay in between. So we're going to set this up. Actually, I'll show you it without the time delay so you'll understand why it's useful. And in fact, it takes a moment to move it, so we might be happy with it without. Let's double check. Let us absolutely double check. Set local rotation. Get local rotation. Always remember where to put the quotation marks. Fortunately, it color codes the text, which actually makes it a lot easier to find little mistakes like that. Get local rotation. Close. Close. And it errored because that currently is not a string. It produces a vector. So cast it as a string. Okay. Or bring it up just a bit here for this one. Save. Bring it up a bit more. You can think of each part I'm moving this as a frame of animation. There'll be a brief delay between every part it moves along this path. I accidentally put the space in the wrong place. Alright, and that completes the set of steps. Now you may wonder why I just didn't bother copying it in each time. Simple. I find it very convenient to just shift, down arrow, delete, down arrow, shift, down arrow, delete. Hold shift, down arrow, delete. Hit down once, hold shift down, delete. I actually have a kit that does a lot of amazing things with moving prims around that I do this way. And of course, it's neutral position copied from open. And we again set it to invisible. This is why we actually set it to be invisible, because we can flip it back to the start position without anybody or anything ever noticing. Save. Now we're going to actually run the page option here in state entry. Actually, I'm going to set a brief delay just so I can get the camera in a better position. Sleep. 2. That's a brief time delay. There you go. Turn off the ability to see the invisible. Do it again. There. So now you have a way to turn the page. And that turned out to be an alright speed. Now, just because I want to go ahead and start prepping this part for future scripts, and it's a simple thing, I'm going to show you how I would have set up that delay. An integer, whoops, weight equals 0.2. That is 0.2 second wait right there. I then would do this. Sleep, wait, specifically making sure that I go up to the line above when I copy, because it makes it very easy to just insert each line right in there like that. easy as can be. But why did I have to create an integer up here? It's a stand-in for every one of these. That is so that it's very easy to change all of them. Except we get a type mismatch. Why do we get a type mismatch? Because that decimal. Float is how you deal with decimals. And you see the different speed that goes turning that page? That's because of that. Let's change that to 0.1. Save. Now by changing that one float, remember if you're dealing with a decimal, you got to do it as a float. I've changed all of them. By changing one, I change all of them. Let's cut it in half again, 0.5. Barely notice the difference. But that's a useful a useful trick to know. If you want to space out particular operations, you want to use a sleep and a specific time, and you can change all of them. I change it in one place, it changes it everywhere. Now, the next step is it's not really a book, it was just blank pages. I went ahead and grabbed a couple of textures I found online. These are actually images out of, I believe they're out of Dungeons and Dragons books. But we're going to have to put them somewhere. You'll see why shortly. First, we're just going to drop ones onto the pages, like so, like so. Now, because of how these are cut, those aren't currently sitting on it right. So we're going to play with the texture settings, horizontal scale, bring those into where they fit just right. Horizontal offset. There we go. Now those look like pages in some kind of special book. So we're going to go to the master control. This is a thing you want to put in the master control. I'm going to make these names simpler. Page 1. Did I have a space in that? Yes. Rename. Page 2. Rename. You can name them anything. Again, I'm doing this to make it simple. Alright, so we have page 1, 2, 3, and 4 in there. Why do we put them in there? So that we can call them as we go. We're going to have to get two pieces of information, though. We're going to have to get both the link number and the face to make this work. So, we're going to take touch start, requires an integer, owner say, link, get link number, close that out. Owner say face equals string. Detected touched face. Sorry, detected touch face. These are going to give us two numbers. Forgot to add the plus sign to say this string continues past the quotation mark. And this actually requires an extra argument. Detected touch face 0, that means the first touch it detects, if it detects more than one. There we go. Link number 4, face 0. Cut. Paste. Link number 3, face 1. So pull that back out, because we don't need it anymore. Now, why did we need those? Simply because we need to know where we're going to put the given texture. Another thing we need, you can't always transfer a texture by having it in here. You need to have its key. I'm going to make sure that I include these textures in your copies, but copy asset UUID. Key page 1 equals key page 2, key page 3. You can substitute your own textures, absolutely no problem. You just want to make sure that they'll line up with the sizing of the pages. Otherwise, they're going to look a little stretched out or scrunched up. Copy UUID. Copy UUID is an incredibly convenient trick. Save. There we go. Now, when it triggers the page call back and forth, in fact, we're going to give it a call here, page. And you're going to want to keep track of what page it's on if you want this to flow properly. So that's going to actually involve another integer. Integer count. Let's make it count. And give it a default value of 0. So, page. If count equals 0, then message linked, because you're going to have to trigger the turning page to go somehow. null key. Sleep 1. Set link texture. That is going to be the first one that's going to show is when the page flips over. The one on the right is going to be the first one to reveal. So you want link 3. And since count equaled 0, we're going to say page 4, comma, face 1. Sleep 2. We will test these to see how to change them. That link texture. 4, comma, page 3, 1. Count equals 1. Return. Else if, we're doing else so that you can add as many other pages as you want, or as many other sets of pages as you want. Almost all of this is going to be identical code, so we copy and paste. There are other shortcuts if you're going to do a lot of identical code, but there we go. Page 2 and page 1. Since this shows up first, it would be page 2, and this would be page 1. There we go. Now we want to know how to trigger those. If detected link number 0, because it needs to know which contact it's talking about, equals 4, or detected link number 0 equals 3. Those are the two link numbers that are associated with these two pages. Page. That also turns this into an else if. So the first thing it sees is if it touched either of these two. Now you don't have to worry about that triggering in this particular case if it's inside or if it's closed, because they'll be inside the main thing. You can't reach them. In another situation where they're not locked away that way, and you go to do this, if it's one of these two is the first thing it checks. If it's not either of these, it goes through its other two checks. So save. And back up here, we see the call for page. So we go back to these. Copy. Paste. Else if message equals page. I get the wrong. I got that in the wrong thing. Don't save. We find our page down in here. Control-C, Control-V. If message equals page, then we trigger the function page. Now in this case, you notice, and a lot of times if I've gone through and I have a function and a variable by the same name, the compiler doesn't accept it. However, in this case, I have the same names here. That's because this is a message. This is not a variable. This is not something that the compiler is holding the place of. This is just a thing that's sitting there. It's processed and gone. It doesn't count as the name of a specific thing, like the name of this function or the name of a variable would. That's why that's allowed here. Alright, that's saved. There you go. Your pages actually change. To close the book, you click anywhere except on those two parts. Book closes. Book opens up. If you click on the pages, it turns the page. And there you go. Oh, it's not changing. One wonders why. Now that function is contained entirely inside the main control. So, why would that happen? Right here. Count did not get reset to 0. Small flaw, big difference. That's another thing where I talk about debugging being one of the best skills, is being able to look at what's happening and know, without really thinking about it too long, what part of the system could be making that change, or failing to make that change. You could turn it up a notch too if you wanted to, and make it so that it shows certain things on each page. For example, when the page comes up, it will have this picture on it. As it goes over, it will have the picture that will go over there. You could absolutely do that. But I gotta leave some things for y'all to figure out on your own. All the tools to do it are in here, are in this video. You just have to use them. Alright, so that concludes the lessons this week. Hopefully this answered the questions you wanted between the gate and the book. Again, the links for the freebies of those will be in the description of this video. The textures will be inside the book. You'll simply have to take them out and put them in your inventory to get their UUID, which is a universal identification code. Basically, it's the same thing as an avatar's key, but for any given thing in Second Life. I will make sure everything is properly permissioned for you to be able to do so. If you have any other questions, comments, or requests for other videos, I have a few requests coming up, but again, next week is going to be a continuation of the gate and the book as I go through and show you more efficient and somewhat complicated, but definitely superior methods of achieving the same results. So I hope to see you all again next week. I wish you well, and as usual, happy coding!